Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. I'm joined by Rob, my co-creator, co-commentator, co-caster, co-compatriot.
Hello.
We're here for the part two. Started with the shadows, and now we are going into the light. It's kind of like we're in a tunnel, right? Like we're walking into the tunnel. It's all dark. You see like that shadow centipede shit, like coming
Yeah,
through the
the new
Levia card.
card. Yeah,
And now we have the Celestial Dawn here, so we're going to be
just
starting
got the
on.
celestial guy with the lightning bolt greeting you at the end of the
Uh,
tunnel. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're going to be starting with Prism, and then Rob's going to be going into Boltyn. These are meant to be same with the Shadow primers about how to draft the deck and how to play the deck in different kind of matchups here, right?
Mhm.
So starting with Prism definitely the most popular, I would say, by a pretty large margin out of the
Yeah.
four heroes, just because of the consistency and just the raw damage available to her and the raw blocking value. So the flexibility of Prism being quite high on the list compared to the high ceiling, low floor Shadow heroes,
Yeah.
and the sometimes my deck does nothing Boltyn, depending on
Yeah.
the hand,
And
right?
everyone's got to respect the heralds. Everyone's got to get those 6-powered generics to respect
Yeah,
heralds, right?
yeah, 2 for 7, Herald Protection is not fun for
Nope.
anybody here. So, Prism, Sculptor of the Arclight, is the first light hero we're talking about. She's a light illusionist hero that has access to all light illusionist, and illusionist cards in the draft. In general, she has two main win cons that she can go towards in the game: big Herald attacks. So we're talking about that 2 for 7, 2 for 6, an Iris of Reality swinging your auras, generally spectral shields for go again by pitching a blue. Both of these win cons are achievable in the same deck, without having to make like drastic changes either way, and generally will need to be used in tandem in some way, shape, or form. Mainly because Prism doesn't have a traditional weapon in that it doesn't attack by itself, and that's Prism's the only hero in Monarch Draft that has that kind of weapon.
Like
Every other weapon
limitation.
attacks.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So we're looking at like the high priority picks first, starting. So the high priority picks for Prism that you'll want to look for early is when you have like a good idea that you want to play Prism, because obviously when you're open, you're still
Yeah.
looking at those like 2 for 6 generics,
Basically,
those
everyone
poppers.
opens like the same way, and then you
Mhm.
start hedging towards one way. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you guys like some super good bomb card or whatever. But
Yeah.
here you're looking for the Red Heralds, right? Specifically the Red Herald Protection, which is the highest value herald of them all because it comes in for 7 and goes to soul and creates a spectral shield that can be used for your
You're not
Iris of
Luminaris,
Reality next
Iris.
turn. No, oh,
Yeah.
you can use it for your
If you get it,
Luminaris
if
the
you
next
get it,
turn, yeah.
yeah.
And that's going to be the best bang for your buck, so to speak. But really, all the 2 for 7s are going to be the best because it hits that break point, right? There's very little armor in the set, as far as you might have your class armor, like your chest, um, your Runeblade chest piece blocks for 1. Shadow
Yeah.
Hooves of the Shadow Beast blocks for 1. Gallantry Gold blocks for 1.
Right.
But like the headpieces don't block for 1. Ebonfold doesn't block. Halo Illumination doesn't block. So there's not a lot of like pure 1 power blocking cards. Sorry, one blocking equipment in
In the
in
Monarch draft.
the in the Monarch Draft inventory here. So the 7 breakpoints are quite difficult to deal with if they don't have a popper. I'd say Herald of Tenacity Red would come second to protection. It's just a dominate can allow you to finish off a game, especially when combined with your arm equipment, that being Dreamweavers, because you're allowed to give it you're allowed to take away Phantasm and just say 6 dominate. And if you have no armor and if you have no like D-React in Arsenal, or you're not like Prism with like some random answer for it, it's very likely that that could just close out the game, right? You can also open with Herald of Tenacity, and it's like, oh yeah, if they have a popper, they have a hopper. But if they don't, they're taking 3 free damage and you get a soul, right? Other high priority picks include obviously the red generic 6 power cards, as they're good for your matchup specifically into Levia, because Levia is able to pop a lot of your heralds, because the generic 2 for 6s cannot be popped, but are generally very good value. So like the Stony Woundhog can possibly gain power. The Rally of the Rearguard is pretty good also, and the general value of those cards are going to outstrip 2 for 1 every single time, because you're going to take 2 cards, and unless their hand is particularly good, they generally can't put up that much damage onto you the turn later. So they're going to be leaking some damage. Red Invigorating Light is a great card. Since the early game, it automatically goes into Soul when you have none in Soul, and can be used as a popper in the mirror, which there's not a lot of cards other than generics that can be used. It's a light card. It's not an illusionist card.
That's true.
And then paying that 3 for 6 to get that automatic Soul is super, super good when you're just trying to like create a spectral shield and swing with Iris of Reality.
Luminaris.
Yeah, you almost said Luminaris.
Only weapon
Iris
I've
of
ever used.
Reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it automatically goes to soul. It doesn't need to hit. Red Prismatic Shield is a bomb, I would say, in Prism. The reason specifically it goes right up next to like Red Herald Protection is being a bomb, as the card allows you to set up a very large board state very quickly. And it gives you flexibility on both the offense and the defense, depending on what your opponent is doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this means that additionally, if you're also able to get it super early, like holy moly, if you get it like turn 0, you're just chilling, right? Like you're just like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna start with a board state of 3 spectral shields.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You literally like you pitch for your Halo of Illumination, you get a card in soul, draw a card,
Right.
pitch another card, create 3 spectrals, arsenal pass, and you're just
Oh
like,
man.
good luck.
Yep.
And it's pretty strong. So the next cards are red and yellow spears of Surreality. The red comes in for 5, the yellow's 4, and the main source is it's a good source of go again that you can sink a blue into and follow up with a herald. So you pitch a blue spears 1 for 5 or 1 for 4, and then you follow with a 2 for 6 or 2 for 7. It's a nice way of getting a 3 card 10, 3 card 11, which is pretty good in this format. So I would say that's yeah, they can pop it, but again, if they're popping that, they're not popping something else. They only have so many poppers unless they're Levia, right? So not amazing into Levia, but it still blocks for 3. So if you need it to block, you can block, right? Lastly, the other best generic card, other than like Rouse the Ancients, is also obviously very good if you pull it off. But as far as the common cards goes and the rares, Zealous Belting, red and yellow. The blue pitch is okay in a pinch. Most of your yellow heralds are all going to have 6+ power, other than Tenacity is a 5. But all the 6 power and higher yellow is able to just pitch it and come in for 4 or 5 go again. So easy to trigger that go again and allowing you to come for those 10+ damage turns. You can't pop Zealous Belting, right? And so again, you're trying to push that 10, 11, 12 damage turn as often as you possibly can to start leaking, to make them start leaking damage or giving them your entire hand, right? Equipment-wise, the only high priority equipment pick I would put on here is Halo of Illumination. So the main reason is you're able to use a turn 1 to get a soul and start to set up board state and the spectral shields from the get-go. The other reason is it does have Spell Void 1 for those pesky chain decks, which a main way that they actually end up killing you is arcane damage, right? So Halo is very flexible in that kind of way, and gaining cards in soul is just super important in general for Prism. Dreamweavers is a great piece of equipment, but I would put it like right in the next tier down, as it usually just finds use mainly into Levia, because it allows you to like skip a Phantasm proc. So if you have a really good kind of Herald turn, if you have a protection, and they're on their Blood Debt train, and you want to do some damage, you just like Dreamweaver's pitch and then protection them for 7, get a Spectral Shield, and getting 8 value, especially if it's going in for lethal, very good, right? So it's mainly forcing lethal, getting cards out of hand, and not allowing them to keep snowballing the game there, right? But it would be slightly higher if you're able to snag like a red Herald of Tenacity, as I kind of mentioned before, because then you're able to like guarantee a non-poppable dominate. Luminara, Soul Shield, and Genesis are all snap picks. I don't really need to mention why. They're all just the raw power of those cards.
Majestic,
insane.
so you're likely not going to find them that often, but
yes. But keep in mind to draft more yellows if you have Luminara. You need the yellows in the pitch zone to actually get and go again there. So
it's
keep that in
true.
mind.
That is true. Yeah.
The yellow and blue heralds can generally be taken on the wheel, generally, right? So if you have like a red herald and like a yellow herald of ravages, you can generally get the ravages on the wheel and pick up the red herald. Generally taken there, but should make them about 25 to 30%, 35% of the deck as far as having pitch, 3 blocks, your cookie cutter, good value cards, like even a blue War Turn Herald for 5 is still a blue War Turn Herald for 5, right? The next tier down from the aforementioned cards would be cards that are usually good but can get finicky in certain matchups. These cards include the rare auras, Parable, Merciful, and Ode. I would rate Parable and Ode higher, so at the higher end of the spectrum, and Merciful a bit lower. The reason is because Ode, you're able to give all your illusionist attack actions go again, which is very useful because you probably don't have Luminara. It's the Majestic, as we mentioned, right? So being able to give everything go again, your illusionist attack actions, is very powerful, and the additional damage is nice. So if they take 1, it's actually 2. That's better for like aura builds, but like just the raw fact that you can still swing this thing for 4 go again with
Iris.
With your Iris, yeah. And if they're taking 1, they're taking 2, because then they have to block 2 cards to not take any damage. Super good for a weapon, right? And they have Spectra. Parable lets you like flash, flash just like instant speed pitch 2 cards, and then have this turn a popper into a 5 power. If it's a 7, it doesn't stop it from popping. It just turns it into a 6. But when they're trying to, later in the game, when they're trying to block with a popper and change tempo, very, very powerful card to allow you to get an on hit, possibly win the game if they're low enough life, because then it just sends through all the damage. But also get that kind of heart and soul, whatever the Herald effect is. And it's also very good into chain specifically, because in the later game where they're trying to kill you, as it counters particularly wide turns and breakpoints, because it still has the -1 power on all their attacks, right? So all these buffs
Right.
from like Founding Demagon, Riftbind, whatever, it's still -1 on all those attacks, right?
Yep.
Illuminate Red and Rising Solar Tide Red and Yellow are also going to be like your 3-block role player cards to go into this tier that help you on the defense and offense, because they all block for 3. Kind of annoying, because if they hit, they all go into Soul, especially the Illuminate 0 for 4. Quite nice.
4, yeah.
Yep. Next, lower down on the list, Impenetrable Belief Blue and Yellow. These are mainly a hedge into the Shadow Heroes, so they help you block out Chain in the late game, as well as Levia when Levia starts to go off, because all their additional costs a lot of them are 3, like they banish 3 cards.
Yeah.
And so once they banish 3 cards, this becomes a 4-block. Very good, very nice. So it's quite good, but it's useless in the mirror, and it's useless into Boltyn. So again, it's purely a sideboard tech card, but it's still, could be used for pitch as a blue or a yellow. Blinding Beam Red. Yellow can be fine. It's good into Shadow Hero, stopping them pop your heralds. The blue is very bad. I wouldn't recommend the blue unless you have to.
Yeah.
They don't get a discount versus generic poppers, so it's less good into like Boltyn, for instance. Also, if like the Shadow Heroes have generic poppers, doesn't work into that.
I think everyone's gonna want to get those generic poppers anyway. Yeah.
Yep. Phantasmify Red and Yellow are really only good with Weavers, because they provide another outlet for pitch. So you could pitch a blue or whatever, pop Dreamweavers, Phantasmify, and then a Herald, and it's coming in for like a raw coming in for a raw 12, like a 7+5 off a red.
Oh yeah.
7+5 off a red. Pretty good. Just coming in for 12 off 3 cards. Not unblockable damage, but if they have 4/3 blocks, they have 4/3 blocks. A lot of the time they don't have 4/3 blocks, though.
It's true.
So you're able to get some damage across here. That is kind of the piece there. The equipment that I didn't mention, Ironhide chest and legs, are generally recommended, specifically the chest and legs, because you can get Weavers and Halo in the other 2 spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Possibly one more piece in either the arms or head if required. If like you can't find those other 2 pieces, like there's more prisms in the pod, but to Weavers you can take the arms, Ironhide arms, to turn a yellow and or a blue into blocking value, like really good value. Because if you have 3 Ironhide, a blue is 6 block.
For 6 block,
right?
Yeah.
A yellow is 4 block. Pretty good. Your yellows and blues don't usually do that, right?
Yep.
Works quite well into Boltyn for not allowing the triggers, because they're not attack actions. So they're not going to allow that +1 for Boltyn to keep having go again. And you just don't have to take raw damage to like not allow him to get go again, right? So as well as providing raw defense into a dominated attack for Levia, think of like Writhing Beast Hulk, Pulping, Convulsions, like those things that end games. You can keep your armor up for those matchups to make sure you're not just like dead on board. Chain, block is good, but it's less specifically useful in the overall fatigue strategy. It's just a good card into it. So you can pick these up on the earlier side, but not before any of your like priority picks, right? If you see a red Herald of Protection, don't pick up Ironhide Boots. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. You could do it, but don't say I didn't warn you. So that's kind of like the draft, kind of the priority that you want to be looking for, depending on what draft you're in and what seat you're in. As far as the play style here, so against Levia, generally you need to focus more on using your generic and light attacks. So this is going to probably be your harder matchup. You need to focus on the generic and the light attacks that don't have Phantasm. So Illuminate, Rising Solar Tide, Zealous Belting, cards like that, combined with consistently swinging a Spectral Shield with Iris of Reality for 4 go again. The Prismatic Shield comes in clutch in this matchup, because if you're able to get some early Spectrals, and then Levia's not able to generate enough damage with early Blood Debt coming in for like 8+ whatever with hooves, you're able to like whittle them down, and by the time they're actually going for it, they don't have as much wiggle room if they miss, right? Once Levia has gone on the offense, generally it's easier to try to fatigue them rather than to out-trade them, as they have very good value just on raw damage, and you could obtain taking damage for them to just pop your Herald, right?
Right.
Doesn't feel that great. So if you have Weavers as still early on, you could try to keep a 2-card 7 for a Red Herald if it puts them in lethal range to force a block. But generally just block up. That's like the only scenario where you can consider it. Into Chain, you could focus more on swinging the large heralds to put pressure, along with using cards that are very good at blocking, such as Imperishable Belief, to stop their like 3+ shackle turns. So that's generally they get 2 turns left, 3 shackle, 4 shackle. That's what you're going to want to have your Imperishable Beliefs, if you can, to prevent getting too much damage across. Because after that, they can't really do much to win the game. Here, it's generally going to be better to use any Spell Void to block the Arcane and not use it for the utility, as the Arcane is generally how Chain's going to win. All the raw 3 and 4 blocking cards that Prism possesses. So the Impenetrables, all your Heralds block for 3. The only way Chain can get around that is very wide turns, poking a lot with Arcane damage, right? So you get Spell Void 1 on Weavers, Spell Void 2 on Halo. They come in clutch in these matchups, and that's why I rated Halo so highly, and Weavers pretty highly too. The last one's Boltyn. Boltyn, I would say, is the easiest matchup here, because into Boltyn, you can just try to be aggressive early. They generally don't have a lot of poppers.
Yeah.
In general, it just doesn't work very well with their strategy. You could try to be aggressive early with Heralds if possible. Boltyn will only have like 1 armor on the Gallantry goal to block a 7-power Herald effectively. Drafting your non-attack actions such as like Seek Enlightenment, Seek Enlightenment, Minnowism, and a Warmonger's Recital, even though they're 2 block, they will help with blocking. Because it'll prevent them from gaining go again, but still prevent you from taking too much damage early.
Right.
Things like a Bolt of Courage or whatever, right?
Yep.
That's mainly if you aren't able to string together a defensive enough hand. Like if you want to take 6, and then you just like pitch for like Warmonger's Herald, pitch for Warmonger's Herald is probably better. That's generally the playstyle for Prism in those matchups. And with that, we're going to roll right into Boltyn, the Breaker of Dawn, I think.
I believe you're right. I haven't looked at the card in a hot minute, but Boltyn nonetheless.
Don't tell the viewers that.
Yeah.
Rob is a Boltyn main.
That is far from the truth. I do like Boltyn though. I've played a lot of Boltyn, but anyway. So looking at specifically the draft side of playing Boltyn, he has 2 abilities. So the first ability is to basically buff any attack if the opponent blocks it with an attack action card. And however, he can only activate it if he's charged that turn. Okay, so once an attack has been buffed, his second ability allows him to give it go again, as long as there's a card in Soul to banish. Because of these 2 effects, Boltyn really relies on charging his Soul consistently throughout the game, because you add Soul, remove Soul, turn to turn. And he loves cards that can buff in order to give his attacks go again. So as with drafting every other hero in Monarch, you'll always want to start by picking the 6-power generic cards early on in order to combat Prism, right, the Phantasm mechanic. They're also just strong on-rate cards, right, for the most part, so you should prioritize picking them in order to just stay open in the draft. This includes cards such as Outmuscle, Pound for Pound, Rally the Rear Guard, and Stony Woodenhog in red specifically. Boltyn is a little different in the sense that there are a few cards that are just like insane in Boltyn. And even though you'll be closing yourself off a little earlier, it's worth snapping them up. These cards are mainly V of the Vanguard, which is a rare, right, that can really blow up Boltyn's turn. And Lumina Ascension, which is a Majestic, of course, but is absolutely like the key card in any constructed Boltyn deck. So if you see them, it might be worth snap picking them early. Just get like a really bomb Boltyn deck. I'd say you could probably still pick the 6 attack generics first, though, but via the Vanguard and Lumina are close seconds, in my opinion. So now shifting to the light cards specifically, the only one I really like for Boltyn is Red Illuminate, because it has the 4 attack breakpoint, and it also helps Boltyn charge his Soul for a single card, right? You don't have to play a card then charge something else. It charges itself. So it's a very annoying card, especially because of the 4 attack. It's also fine in Prism too, so you can stay open by taking Illuminate Red. Soul Shield is also great if you can find one, but it's a Majestic, so don't really count on it. Celestial Cataclysm is fine, mainly because it blocks 3 and is a yellow, but I wouldn't really count on using it much because you really should be using your Soul to maintain tempo as Boltyn, and banking on a single Celestial to show up really isn't a good strategy in my opinion. I'd honestly prefer taking good cards that charge your soul over a Celestial Cataclysm if you can, but it's still a fine card. And also the one upside is that it's also a popper in Prism, so you could take it if there's nothing really else that's good in the pick. I think Soul Food is a bit of a trap in my opinion because even though charging the soul is really good in Boltyn, the attack actions already do that, so it's a little redundant to playing Soul Food, and you also completely shut down your tempo by doing it. So I'd avoid Soul Food if possible. So besides Red Illuminate, the next cards you should be focusing on are basically the bread and butter of Boltyn's deck, and these are the light warrior attack actions that charge your soul. Take Flight is probably the best one because it charges and it gains go again. You can realistically take any color of Take Flight and you'll be fine, but red is obviously the best because of the 4 attack breakpoint. Express Lightning, Engulfing Light, and Bolt of Courage are next on the list, prioritizing the reds and the yellows over the blues, of course. Bolt of Courage, it's fine. I don't want to call it a trap necessarily, but even though it has the potential to draw a card on hit, it doesn't have innate go again, and it only comes in for 3, right? So
Yeah.
it's usually an easy block for the opponent to give you like a 3 blocking non-attack action card. So I'd prioritize the other 4 attack cards over Bolt of Courage if possible, but it's still a fine card because it charges soul, and if you can buff it with Boltyn's ability, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, I think Bolt of Courage gets exponentially better the more buffs you have. So like Seek Enlightenment, Warmonger's Recital.
Right.
I think Bolt of Courage goes up quite a bit because then you have the buff regardless, so you can gain the go again.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for them to double block to give you 3 cards for it, right? So then what they'll have to do is they'll have to give you like 3/3/2 or something like that, or 3/2/2, right? And so you're able to force out a lot more cards rather than, oh, no block, you can't give it go again. So it becomes a lot better when you have more buffs and more courageous steel hands. So I will say that it's probably right up there next to right under Take Flight if you're able to get some early buffs. Minnowism, Red Minnowism, hell of a card, like Little Minnowism. You're gonna mention that later, but like Red Minnowism, Warmongers, Seek Enlightenment.
And
Seek Enlightenment, like it already goes to Soul, I think, so it's kind of like it's not as good, but
but
no, it doesn't go to Soul. No, it doesn't go to Soul on hit, does it? So Seek Enlightenment's actually really, really good. It only as additional cost charge, and then if it hits, draw a card, right? So yeah, Seek Enlightenment's actually very, very good with Boltyn Courage.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But echo that point entirely. It's a good card, but you have to have the buffs to be able to play it up. Okay, so we talked about the light warrior cards that charge. The next tier down from those cards are the cards that say, if you've charged this turn, do X. They're nice to haves in my opinion, but they aren't the bread and butter of the deck. So make sure to prioritize the cards that actually charge your soul first before picking any of these up. The best one on the list that I have here is Valiant Thrust, because it can potentially be a 1/7 in red or a 1/6 in yellow. So a really good above curve card if you can get the charge in before playing it. Battlefield Blitz is less impactful in my opinion. It's good if you can play Take Flight first, get the go again, play Battlefield Blitz, get go again, and kind of keep going that way. But that's already a 4-card commitment for that combo. It's good when it works, but you're more than likely just going to be using Battlefield Blitz as a 1/5 with a 2-card hand. It's going to be like, block with 2 cards, Battlefield Blitz, basically. Lastly, you should prioritize picking up cards that buff your attack. So we talked a little bit about the buffs for the Bolt of Courage. Courageous Steel Hand is a great attack reaction because it can both proc the on-hits for cards such as Engulfing Light and Bolt of Courage, but it can more importantly enable Boltyn's ability to give your attacks go again by banishing from Soul. That's so important for the hatchets too, actually, because the first hatchet needs to be buffed in order to give it go again with Boltyn. It usually just swings in for 2. You're relying on your opponent blocking with an attack action there, so buffing that attack is actually very crucial in Boltyn. Other buffs that are quite impactful in Boltyn are the red and yellow Dusk Path Pilgrimage. The yellow is fine because it buffs your first hatchet to 4, right? It's a buff for 2, so your hatchet can go again with a 4 attack. It's also awkward to block because it's a 4 attack breakpoint. And the on-hit is to allow it to attack a second time, so you could potentially have 3 hatchet swings that turn. Plow Through is also good for buffing the first hatchet and then giving it Go Again with Boltyn. Second Swing, although it's more powerful than Plow Through because it gives you the upfront 1 for 4, usually isn't as great because it relies on you having attacked the weapon first before getting your buff. Boltyn already has trouble giving that first hatchet Go Again anyway, so Second Swing would require a lot more setup to use that, more effectively. You'd first need to buff your hatchet with another card, swing it, give it Go Again with Boltyn, then play Second Swing, right? Then into another attack action or your second hatchet. It is good value, but way too much setup in my opinion. So you can avoid that one if you can. The Belittle and Minnowism combo is surprisingly good in Boltyn, because a lot of the yellow and blue charging cards, or the red Bolt of Courage, which we talked about, can enable Belittle's search effect, as well as take advantage from the Minnowism buff. So they're both very good in Boltyn, because a lot of the charge cards are typically lower attack value, especially yellows and blues. Okay, moving on to the equipment, which I didn't really talk about yet, but they're really, really good in Boltyn. Gallantry Gold is exceptional for Boltyn. The 1 armor battle worn is amazing, and it allows you to easily swing your hatchets without worrying about your opponent blocking with a non-attack action card, especially if you pair it with Duskpath Pilgrimage for the extra swings. Stubby Hammerers is a fine alternative to Gallantry Gold, and a Boltyn deck without either of those will definitely feel the difference. So if you're going Boltyn, make sure to pick up a Gallantry or a Stubby Hammerers. The Halo Illumination is the other piece of equipment that I'd highly recommend for Boltyn. Eric talked about Spell Void 2, which is very important against Chain, but it's also basically a free soul charge, which can come in handy if you're running low on soul when you happen to draw some of your power cards and you don't have enough soul to play them all out. And it's also a cheeky card to play on turn 0, since you can just draw up after anyway, so you start the game with 1 soul, you're looking pretty good. General play pattern for Boltyn, you're basically going to be charging soul pretty slowly throughout the game, just like in CC. You block with a few cards, play an attack, charge soul. You don't rely on Lumina anymore, but the game plan is pretty much the same. If you have Eve of the Vanguard, you set up for that kind of turn, and use your Go Agains when you can, see how your opponent blocks. Basically, you're a give and take kind of deck. You don't really have big blowout turns because this is not constructed, so you're going to rely a lot on getting the consistent charges and look for ways to weave in your hatchets with your attack action cards. So yeah, that's basically Boltyn in a nutshell for draft.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is it's definitely it's definitely an on-off gameplay, right? So a lot of your turns are going to be bread and butter, pitch a blue, take flight, charge a car's hatchet. That's going to be your big your standard 3-card turns essentially, and then you're going to be blocking with a card if you do actually have that, just because you're able to extract good enough value. If they don't have an on hit, then you're able to get that value, and then your big 5-card hands are going to be your V turns, when you have Valiant Thrust, stuff like that, when you have Courage of Steel Hand, when you can guarantee these on hits, like a Bolt of Courage or whatever, and able to keep drawing and keep swinging with both of your hatchets. And that's going to be around probably at the minimum 2 soul, probably more like 3 soul, just to enable both of your hatchets to be able to do something, charge, Go Again, hatch, and Valiant Thrust, right? And that's the blue, and then maybe you have you're starting with a 0 cause Bolt of Courage, and then Courageous, Go Again, hatchet. And then the first hatchet obviously has to have something to give it Go Again, right? And so to that end, you might have to play around how your opponent is blocking.
Yeah. Hopefully catch them when they have to block with their attack action card, or buff with something else. Dust Path is great too.
Yeah, Dust Pass and Seek Enlightenment, whatever. Right. Belittle Minnowism, Rob did mention it. Super good, and super good to pick early if you're even thinking about picking them early and then going into Boltyn and Chain if they're open, but they're also still okay in Prism for some reason. The cards are just super good. I played a triple red Belittle with a Minnowism and Prism, and I'm just hey, I could do stuff into Levia. Come in with Belittle, find Minnowism, play another Belittle, come in for 11, and you can't pop it. And you have Stubby, so they're +1. You can do some really disgusting stuff. And the fact is that Belittle searching a blue Minnowism is super good in Boltyn, because a lot of the times you're so resource starved with the charge that getting that extra blue Minnowism, super good. So I would definitely recommend picking it highly, especially if you're inching towards Boltyn, or even early when you haven't committed anything.
Stay really open with that. Yeah.
that I don't think Rob mentioned was Adrenaline Rush. Adrenaline Rush super super good in Boltyn, right?
True.
Because if you're at lower life, it's gonna gain 3. So this thing is a 7 go again in Boltyn. Like
Right.
it's like actively good. It's a good card in general to pick right up there with the poppers, like the 2 for 6s.
Right.
It's right up there with like Surging Militia for like the red 2 costs that
Mm-hmm.
like don't pop, but they're extremely powerful. Like Surging Militia being able to like come in 2 for 7 if they block with 2/3 blocks and get 1 damage over, and then Adrenaline Rush coming in for a 2 for 7 for like you just have to be lower health, and then it's
Right.
just like, oh well, if they don't block, and you just like give it go again with Boltyn and then start swinging with Axe, and it's just like, oh, you're getting like 10 value off of that card. That's 9 value off of that card.
True.
So that's another like
Yep.
generic card that I would definitely. It's generally good when you pick it early, but it's extra good in specifically Boltyn because you can give it go again, which is a little
Right.
bit disgusting. So that's
True.
kind of the
Yeah.
only things I would add to Rob's
Yep.
Rob's Rob's piece there.
Absolutely.
And that's light. So we've done shadow, we've done light. Is there anything you want to add
Rounded out
to
Monarch.
the we've rounded out Monarch draft. Hopefully everyone's ready for their pre-releases coming up this week. If
Yep.
they're the Monarch draft
Pre-release
pre-releases, should
July
be
7
all
to
out
9,
for
I
that.
believe. And of
And
course,
the skirmish.
Nationals will be all Monarch draft, right?
Yep. Skirmishes, also a lot of them are going to be Monarch draft end of July. So want to get those tasty cold full Genesises. It's Prism and go to the moon.
Yep.
Right. So hopefully those are kind of like guides on how to draft and play these heroes are going to be useful here. With that, like this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And with that, from wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.